it sounds like you're kind of a plotter. You like to plot. Can we get into a little bit of your writing process of how you kind of go from idea to finished story?
Sure. When I was younger, I was not a plotter. I was a pantser, complete pantser. I've like discovery written a 250,000 word book.
Hmm.
Uh, in retrospect, it's not a very good book because there are no setups, there are no payoffs. The twists come out of nowhere, and the catharsis in the end is just missing because a lot of the character development that you need to have, the conflicts that need to escalate before they are resolved, all those things are just missing from that book because it was just discovery written. And the only good thing about that book is probably the prose.
Hmm.
But later on, I learned what plotting was. I learned the different story structures. I've watched Brandon Sanderson's lectures like twice or thrice, I think,
Hmm.
and that's where I discovered this concept of it's like it's not really it's what Brandon Sanderson does himself. He plots the key events and then he discovery writes his way to each of those plot points.
Yeah.
And that was a process that worked best for me because when I tried to plot, I got so involved in plotting that the writing became secondary, and that again isn't going to help anyone. But when figured what Sanderson's process is, I thought maybe let's try implementing this, and that made everything go much faster and much smoother for me. Like what I described with Help My Dog is a Chosen One.
Hmm.
It's exactly that. I had key plot points, maybe 4 or 5 plot points that I changed while discovery writing the story. But
Hmm.
in the end of the day, because I had a very clear vision of what the ending is supposed to be, I knew what I had to work towards while discovery writing each
Yeah.
sequence, and that is that has worked for me for that book. It's worked for me for every short story that I've written. And there's a very clear difference between the stories that I have discovery written and the stories that I've plotted. But it's never pure plotting or pure discovery writing. There is a blend. It's just that the ones that I plot better tend to have better structure, tend to have a clearer vision. The setup and payoffs feel a little more organic. Whereas the ones that I've discovery written end up being lacking in just maybe the plot. Like the characters stand out, but then maybe the plot is not as clear. And that's something that I'm actually working on right now with my with my third book. It's called Island of the Dying Goddess. I discovery wrote that whole book, and when I finished the rough draft, I was like, okay, maybe this is not a good book. Maybe I shouldn't announce this. I don't know what. I finished reading it just a week back, and I actually enjoyed it. There's a lot I need to change, but I realized that okay, maybe plotting isn't. You don't really need to plot it. This was just an experiment, of course. But of course, if I had plotted this book, I would have been able to write it faster because it took me a long time. I started writing it in November and only finished it in May. If I
Hmm.
had plotted it, it probably would have finished it in February or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'd be really hard to, even if you discovery writ everything, it'd be hard to at least not know like what the ending, like what the end scene or goal was.
Hmm.
I've seen a few people that like to do that where they just kind of write it and wherever it ends is where it ends. But I feel like for me, I have to know at least the ending, if not multiple plot points in the middle. But I like what you said there, like about Brandon Sanderson's method. I think that's probably where a lot of people are, where they you have your beginning, you have your end, you have a couple of big rocks in the middle, and then you just kind of weave your way to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. So it sounds like you're writing pretty fast though, because if you're writing, so you said it was slow, but if you wrote from November to May, like that's pretty quick for a lot of people.
It's only 77,000 words, so I don't
Mm,
think that's really that quick.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, if you can write a book in a month, 50,000 words in a single month, I think that's really fast.
yeah.
And maybe I'm comparing with the really quick writers because you have Will White releasing 2 books every year. You have
Hmm.
Sanderson he released so many books last year. I've lost count.
Yeah.
So when you compare with them, it's like okay, maybe I'm not fast enough. And given how fast the industry is moving, like you feel the need to keep up with that pace.
Hmm.
So I'm trying to be a little more disciplined with my writing. It's just that life has gotten in the way in the past 1 year. So